Here's a look at First News. Fair, accurate, you get the damn truth. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has died. He was the country's supreme leader. He's the guy that helped oversee mass executions of thousands of people in 1988, later led the country as they enriched their uranium weapons grade level plutonium into nuclear forces now that they have, thanks to our money, by the way, that we have been pumping into Iran by the billions. He was 63. He died in a helicopter crash in northwestern Iran. His death comes as Iran struggles with dissent right now. He lost a presidential election, came to power 4 years later in a vote that was managed by their supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And that crashed Sunday in northwestern Iran. Good riddance. That container ship that caused the deadly collapse of Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge is scheduled to be refloated and moved to a nearby terminal. It's remained at that collapse site since it lost power and crashed into the bridge. In March, the disaster killed 6 construction workers. Authorities said high tide Monday morning is expected to yield the best condition for the crew to start refloating and transit work on that ship. 5 tugboats will then escort the Dali. It has a 2.5-mile journey to get down to a marine terminal. Crews conducted a controlled demolition last week to break down the largest remaining span of that bridge, and that pretty much freed the ship up, so they hope to refloat today. Donald Trump's non-disclosure agreement trial heading into the final stretch. Prosecutors last week and their star witness, I think it provided a little backlash on them. They're going to kick off again today as Trump attorneys were able to cross-examine Michael Cohen. He's been a crook his whole life, and they destroyed him last week in front of the jury. The jury still, at this point of the trial, they don't even know what Trump's being charged with yet. We'll find out what happens this week. There was an Israeli airstrike over the weekend in central Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing criticism from the war cabinet over the war as he goes after terrorists. Where in the hell was the war cabinet when the terrorists and Hamas attacked Israel? The war cabinet didn't come out with anything as he's defending his nation. They found loads of tunnels, series and series of tunnels when they went into Rava over the weekend. This is the network that the terrorists use to conduct their hit strikes and then escape. They're still weeding them out. Netanyahu has said to the world, we will destroy Hamas and terrorism whether you are with us or you are without us. The Biden administration is going to kick off Infrastructure Week by highlighting public and private investments. Joe Biden said we're breaking ground and completing projects in every single state. I don't know of any project that is yet to be completed because the infrastructure money was just passed about a year and a half ago. They're still building, but they're going to highlight it today. They need some victory out there because polls have him way behind. America's not happy with the Biden administration's economic policies on the border, foreign affairs, all getting dismal numbers. Lawyers for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange said the U.S. has provided blatantly inadequate assurances that he will have free press protections if he's extradited to the United States to face espionage charges. The extradition should provide him, they said, with what he needs. It would depend on how much weight the judges give to assurances that U.S. officials have provided that his rights will not be trampled on when he goes to trial. His rights. This is a guy, folks, convicted of espionage, and the United States is assured that he will have his rights when he has a trial. Former President Trump, in the meantime, is undergoing 4 trials at one time in 4 locations around the country. His rights have been eviscerated. No person ever in the history of America has had to undergo 4 trials at one time in 4 locations. But they want to make sure that this man convicted of espionage has his rights. Ed Dwight, America's first black astronaut candidate, finally made it to space. He flew with Jeff Bezos' rocket company. The 90-year-old blasted off from West Texas with 5 other passengers on Sunday. He was an Air Force pilot when John F. Kennedy championed him as a NASA astronaut candidate. He wasn't picked. The trip made Dwight the record holder for being now the oldest person in space. The old record was held, of course, by William Shatner from Star Trek. He flew up in 2021. At the time, he then became the oldest person ever to fly in space, but now Ed Dwight holds that record. French prosecutors said that armed robbers used a motorbike as a battering ram and made off with several $1 million worth worth of valuables in a heist at a luxury Paris boutique. Having refused Saturday to confirm it, Harry Winston was the target. He is a famous jeweler of the stars over there. And they got in and got a bunch of stuff out of there, sped away. They pointed firearms in direction of police officers. So then the police put an end to their pursuit. That figures. That French are used to holding up white flags all the time. So they had them, but since they pointed a gun at the police, they decided to back off. And so they got away. $92 million worth of loot they got in that. On the medical front, U.S. Pediatricians Group is making a policy change about breastfeeding by people with HIV. The group said they can breastfeed as long as they are taking the medications that would suppress the virus that causes AIDS. That's a reversal from the long-standing policy of the American Academy of Pediatrics. The group made the changes today. Experts say drugs used now to treat HIV can reduce the risk of passing the virus to infants to less than 1%. About 5,000 people who have HIV give birth in the United States every year. I would have never guessed that. 5,000 a year. A decisive vote and a big blow to the United Auto Workers. At those two Mercedes factories in Alabama, they voted not to unionize. President Shawn Fain said the UAW will return, and we will press on with our efforts to get those people in our UAW. Employees at the Mercedes plants near Tuscaloosa voted 56% against the union. That vote count handed the UAW a serious setback. After a month ago, they got Volkswagen workers to sign on for representation, but the workers down in Alabama, they said no. Oh, and Disneyland performers who bring you Mickey Mouse, Cinderella, and others characters, they vote to unionize. Labor union said cast members that are in their parades and all the things at the theme park in Southern California voted by a wide margin to unionize and become a bargaining agent. There's 1,700 workers that could possibly be involved in that. 78% voted. The other ones were just goofy or Dumbo. The election took place Wednesday, so, the ones you see walking around shaking hands with the kids, and they've all voted to unionize down there at Disneyland. Red Lobster has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after closing their restaurants. They have been struggling with lease and labor costs piling up in recent years. The seafood restaurant chain said in their court filing it has more than 100,000 creditors and estimated their assets between $1 billion and $10 billion. The company estimated liabilities are between $1 billion and $10 billion. What the hell kind of bank statement is it? No wonder you're broke. Yeah, we have liabilities anywhere between 1 and 10 billion. Yeah. That's a hell of a difference. Mark, when you go into a bank to buy a house, you could fudge your income like $5,000.
Right.
And you got to give statements. Well, I make this, I do some construction work. But you can't have a difference of 1 to 10 billion.
Don't worry about it. Sign here. I'm good for it.
That's big for a creditor. A difference between 1 and 10 billion. Bruce Nordstrom, a retail executive who helped expand his family's Pacific Northwest department store chain, has died. Former chairman died at his home Saturday. He was 90 years old. That chain traces its roots back to Seattle. It actually opened, folks, as a Seattle shoe store. It was opened by his grandfather, who was a Swedish immigrant. Oh, wait till which face hears that. Here's a guy that he didn't belong there, Mark. But he came over and he started a business and he raised a family. Tester and his crew, they hate stories like this. Oh, yeah. Started from nothing. Built a family business and grew, raised his family there. Then they went public with the company in 1971. That's when, you know what they did? Then they started making some money as a business and successful business people. Oh, she hates that. I bet she doesn't have anything from Nordstrom. World stocks, by the way, advanced earlier this morning. Futures are up so far. U.S. stocks drifted near records on Friday. The Dow finished above the 40,000 mark for the first time. U.S. futures rose. Oil prices climbed after the crash in the Middle East, wondering about what's going to happen in Iran now. Chinese shares were up today. S&P 500, which is much more widely followed now on Wall Street, was up 0.1%. The NASDAQ was down 0.1% over the weekend. And folks, just so you know, it is tick season out there, starting across the United States. They've been out, another mild winter in some places. Favorable factors, which means the tick population will be equal to last year or possibly larger. The most common tick is the blackleg tick. It's the one that spreads Lyme disease. Mark has Lyme disease, but it's not from ticks. It was from corona. The poppy seed size juvenile ticks start appearing in May, and you find them all over the country. They're all over the place. One of the main issues with them is the bite. 20% of the young ticks in the late spring and early summer can carry it, and then that grows to about 50% of the adult ticks by fall. So you want to talk to your doctor should you get bit by a tick, fever, headache, some of the common side effects of that. Avoiding a tick bite is the way to get around Lyme disease, but I mean, none of us go out there and purposely try to get ticks. I mean, you can't help it. Talk with entomologists in your state to find out the recent trends and where the local tick population is. Deer population, they carry ticks. I saw a rabbit one time that I have never seen that many ticks on an animal in my life.
Oh,
I mean, it was unbelievable. And I thought, man, you are going to have a slow, painful death. There were 1,000 ticks on that rabbit that I saw sitting down by my shed one time. But they're out there, folks, so watch them.
In sports, something fishy going on. WNBA, two-time defending champion Las Vegas Aces. A lot of commentary lately since they signed Caitlin Clark, and she's making so much less than the men, and that's league-wide. So now the league is looking into the deal between the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and the Aces, providing each Aces player with an additional $100,000 apiece on top of their salary over the course of the season. And they think that will give them an unfair advantage in recruiting free agents, and they'll be number one forever. So,
oh yeah, crooked.
And that's just the stuff we know about.
Oh yeah, crooked. Cooler today, below normal, 57 degrees. Below normal tomorrow, 62, and by Thursday, 47 for the high, folks. 90% chance of rain Thursday, maybe a half inch of rain coming our way Thursday. So gives you a week to get the grass mowed, get caught up, do that kind of stuff. It's 41 out there right now, partly sunny. 6:44. Yeah, everybody's on Caitlin Clark's butt, you know, because the Pacers have lost their first two games. And folks, you know why the Pacers got the number one draft pick? Because the worst team in the league gets the number one pick.
Yeah, but it's all that jealousy thing with her.
Sure. They were the worst team, the very worst team. They couldn't have beat Skyview last year. So she's got a lot of pressure. I'm hoping that what happened to Simone Biles doesn't happen to Caitlin Clark. She just had so much pressure on her and was such a famous person and so good that she cracked mentally for a while. So hoping she has that mental toughness. Anyway, that's what's happening. Mark and Paul here together. Thanks for tuning in to The Cat. Listen on the app 102.9 on your FM dial.